There's a moment in the Punisher story that almost everyone gets wrong. Most people think Frank Castle became the Punisher the day his family died, that something snapped, that grief turned him into a weapon. But when you actually read the comics, slowly, something else starts to surface. Frank didn't change that day. It simply revealed who he truly was. The Central Park event presented the opportunity of freedom. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. At one point, Frank makes a statement that should stop you cold. He says he doesn't know when he became what he is now. Maybe it was Vietnam, maybe it was that day in the park, or maybe he'd always been this way. That line matters more than people realize, because Frank isn't searching for an excuse. He's searching for a moment of origin, and he can't find one. And this tells you something uncomfortable. If you can't pinpoint the moment you changed, maybe you didn't. When Frank comes home from the war, he doesn't come back angry. He comes back hollow. He moves through his house like a visitor. He knows where everything is, but none of it feels right. He talks to his wife, he sits with his kids, and eats breakfast at the table like a normal family. But he describes his family as if they're strangers. He didn't know how to touch them or knew how to look at them for too long. Everything smells strange, even the air. Even touching his wife feels awkward. He's disconnected. Frank goes through the motions of civilian life, but it feels like an act he's forcing himself to perform. And the more he tries, the more distant he becomes. He was starting to realize that he no longer fits inside the life that he is supposed to want. Frank even admits something that most would never say out loud. Back in Vietnam, he used to dream about home, about being with his family. But once he finally got that life back, he started dreaming about the war. The rumble of bombers, the smell of white phosphorus, taking down enemies with his Marines. The nostalgic wave seems to wash away the new identity that he was trying to create. Now, Frank doesn't give in completely. He attempts to live a normal life and work normal jobs, and was even working hard at creating a second instinct, obviously with the sole intent to bury his first instinct, which is to kill. An example of this is shown when he spotted mob hitmen outside of Fat Sal's. He initially went with his second instinct, which was to leave, continue working at a dead-end job, and mind his business, living the normal life. But then, he remembered witnessing the aftermath of a grotesque murder, which so happened to be one of his co-workers at his other job, and his first instincts took over. So, he attacks them. Not in grief, not in rage, but in execution. He neutralizes the threats, moves on, and attempts to go back to his normal life. That matters, because it shows the act of punishing existed before the park. The Central Park mob hit didn't teach Frank how to kill. It didn't teach him how to judge. It didn't create the instinct. It simply revealed how easily he could act on it. When Frank's family is murdered in Central Park, readers treat it as the catalyst of his transformation. However, Frank doesn't become something new. He simply stops holding himself back. He even says later that there was a time he'd wish he died with him, but he knows now why he didn't. Not to honor their memory, not to seek justice, but to wage his own war. That's Frank being honest with himself. And honesty is what makes this uncomfortable. And this is where Micro enters the story, and where the lie finally collapses. Micro doesn't scream at Frank. He doesn't moralize, and he doesn't even try to fix him. He does something far more dangerous. He tells him the truth calmly. He tells Frank that crime never ends, that no matter how many people he kills, the world won't change. And then he says the thing Frank can't argue with, that Frank didn't keep killing because of his family. He kept killing because he liked it. It gave him clarity, it gave him purpose, and it felt right. And Frank doesn't lash out, He doesn't deny it. He just listens, because somewhere deep down, he's already had that conversation with himself multiple times. This conversation helps him remember when the darkness consumed him on Valley Forge. When the darkness spoke to Frank, it doesn't overpower him. It doesn't possess him, but it does offer him something. A war that never ends, a purpose that never fades, and a life where he never has to pretend again. And it does tell him that there's a price. Not knowing what and how it would cost him, Frank doesn't hesitate. He gives the darkness a resounding yes. Not because he's broken, but because it aligned with who he's always been. Frank Castle didn't become the Punisher because his family died. He became the Punisher because without them, there was nothing left to hold him back. No reason to suppress the instinct, no reason to walk away. Frank gave himself permission, and because of that, he never stopped. And that's the tragedy of Frank Castle. To conclude, Frank Castle didn't become the Punisher because his family died. He became the Punisher because he wanted the war back. There is an old adage that applies to this situation, and that is to be careful about what you wish for, because you just might get it. And well, as you can see, Frank Castle is back in the war, and it will never leave him.